Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Deck Builder here with this week's episode of the Market Monday. This week we are going to continue to track the prices of Double Masters, and you can see that the prices have pretty much stabilized and we're starting to see that decline, which I predicted, and I think it's going to be very similar to Ultimate Masters with having a slight decline day to day, week to week, until we do find a bottom 3 to 4, maybe 6 months away from now. So the overall Double Masters, we're seeing that the big gains from last week have been cards like Mana Crypt and Force of Will that had a bit of a snapback of these high demand cards, and the big losers were both the competitive cards like the Dark Confidant continuing decline, but also the VIP foils had a very weak week, except for cards like Force of Will, and the uncommon and rare foil slots, mainly coming from the VIP supply, also declined very substantially. And now we have the foil multiplier for some of these cards that has zero spread. There is no multiplier. The foils are, in some cases, are actually cheaper than the regular version of the card. And I think this is due to the fact that we're seeing the big box stores supply of the VIP packs start to enter into the market. Now, we don't know if Double Masters draft sets is going to get another small print. That was the rumor. Apparently what happened was all the VIPs were released at once. That's why the supply of VIPs seemed to be much higher than draft booster boxes. But the rumor was that Double Masters would be reevaluated, and if there's still demand, that more draft boosters of Double Masters would get a small wave. So we'll have to wait and see if that is the case. If that is the case, then I'm expecting an even sharper decline in the overall price of Double Masters. So Double Masters is pretty much following the exact same formula that Ultimate Masters followed, or trajectory that Ultimate Masters followed. So you can see that once all the dust settled and the set was released, it was about a set that was worth about $11.50. It declined down to $9.25, and then there was a bit of a rally after this week one, going from $9.25 back up to $10.60. So this is more of the FOMO that happened with Ultimate Masters. People are like, wow, the prices have dropped. This is the time to get in. They're not going to go any lower. And then people bought into the set, and it went back up to $10.60. And then we saw just a very steady stagnation and decline until we hit a War of the Spark, had a resurgence in Magic the Gathering. It went back up, and then Eldraine and Theros also had a decline in Magic the Gathering as a whole. And the cheapest point was actually right before Double Masters was announced. The Ultimate Masters went down to about 900, so 905 was the low as a total value of the set. So then it began to increase, and is still slightly increasing, as there were many cards that were printed from Ultimate Masters in Double Masters, but there are still plenty of cards that missed the reprinting. In fact, most of these top cards missed the reprinting, and they began to actually start to gain value. So I actually think that investing in Ultimate Masters cards right now at their quote-unquote low for many of these cards is actually a better strategy than going into Double Masters. In fact, that's pretty much throughout all of Magic. I would say that it's still better to invest in, besides something that's currently in like Standard, it's better to invest in those cards. In fact, we can take a look at a really good one in the form of Modern Horizons. Modern Horizons has been increasing very substantially in the last month. So you can see that it went from the box value going from 158 almost up to 178 within 1 month. So $20 increase, which is quite significant for Modern Horizons. A lot of this has to do with, we're thinking the supply is going to run out of these Modern Horizons cards, at least for the sealed product, as it is going to rotate with the other sets. So apparently that's what Wizards is doing with these summer sets, is they're going to have like a rotation very similar to the standard sets, that they will be print to demand until they have their year cycle, and then they rotate out. So that's what we're seeing with Modern Horizons, is a lot of these sets are getting last called. This is the last time to actually order the Modern Horizons, and the prices are increasing due to this knowledge. So where do we expect Double Masters? So Double Masters, again, if we look back at Dawn Glare, it's down to 292, and you can see that we're seeing that exact same snapback with the expected value of the box. It was 404 at the release, 270 at the low. It jumped back up to 320, and now we're down to about 292. as the recording of this video. So I still have the sheets up. I'll definitely share this one so you can take you can kind of compare the weeks. So we have the 8/12 update and we have the other update for the Ultimate Masters or the Double Masters, and you can see kind of the price discrepancies between the cards. So overall, the cards that are holding well are the high demand cards. Many of these cards that I called with the greens have done very well. We have Doubling Season going back up to 43. We have the Atraxa and the Avacyn Archangel that have been holding very, very high prices. We see Blight Steel that is stubbornly holding prices, but it has started to decrease. And then we see many of the other cards that don't have the highest demand, like Mox Opal, are starting to go back down again. So we have Mox Opal all the way down to 39, which, you know, maybe I was a little aggressive on some of these adjusted prices of where I think they'll sit. But again, this is something when I think the dust completely settles. That's why I force Will at 50, because I think eventually it will get there. So I've been having a lot of criticism for my call on Force Will, and they're like, well, look, Force Will went back up to 110. Well, it's back down to 88, and that's a pretty significant decline from kind of that rally that we saw with Force Will going back up to 100. And yes, I still do think that eventually Force of Wills will go down to $50, and then this is something that is going to take a long time. It's going to be very similar to something like Liliana. So Liliana was a card that stubbornly held its price as well. So you can see here it was an $80 card, had kind of this run even after Ultimate Masters, went to about 85, and then the real decline when investors realized that this wasn't the most solid pick to hold on to long term and would rather flow their money into something else that could actually gain. And all of them seemed to simultaneously go on the market. We also had Modern that wasn't doing very well, and the decline kind of represented that. And it's all the way down to like 60, $55. And I think that that's what we're going to see exactly with Force Will. You can see the prices are pretty similar, even though I do have Force of Will getting hit harder than Liliana. And its price is currently higher than Liliana. I think that's mainly due to the fact for VIPs. Ultimate Masters did not see VIPs, and we're seeing so much more supply from Double Masters comparatively to Ultimate Masters. I think is going to affect all these cards. So if it didn't hold true for Ultimate Masters, like if these cards couldn't hold their prices, I have a hard time seeing cards from Double Masters with even more supply being able to hold significant prices long term. So let's take a look at the overall health of the rest of the market. We can see we're having a little bit of increases in the older Commander sets like Commander 2019 and some of the older Commander sets that didn't see a lot of significant reprints. Overall, we have a stagnation in both Modern and in Pioneer. They're not necessarily going down. They're pretty much flat. So you can take a look at most of these sets and they're pretty much flat with their value. Some of them that did get hit by the mystery printings are still going down in the Modern era. If we look at Standard, Standard is also pretty flat. We have Ikoria still going down. Theros is, that's pretty much flat. And even Throne slightly, it's still flat. The rotating sets are going to be decreasing as their Standard viable cards rotate out of Standard. So again, that is where we stand with Ultimate Masters. So I'm going to double down on Double Masters, not Ultimate Masters, Double Masters, with my predictions. I think we haven't seen the beginning of the fall. It can be very, very similar to Ultimate Masters. We're going to see this slowly fall. And I think the big fall is going to come when the new shiny stuff comes out. So Zendikar, be watching for Zendikar. If Zendikar has Fetchland spoiled in it, you better believe that we're going to see a massive decline in even things like Mana Crypts, as everyone starts to say, okay, this is the new shiny toy that we need to buy. Let's get all of our money, let's put all our eggs in that basket for Zendikar, and Double Masters is going to be just like Ultimate Masters. It's going to be forgotten. In fact, the cheapest time that I saw that you could get into Ultimate Masters was about April, was when the price of a Double Master average on eBay was the lowest I've ever seen. And it's funny with Double Masters, it still does have more of an expected value than Ultimate Masters does, but the price of Double Masters is already lower than what you could really get Ultimate Masters throughout the scope of its life before the Double Masters printing. So the market already has less faith in Double Masters, and mainly due to the fact that everyone has just pushed it into VIPs, and these draft booster boxes have been kind of the second class product where people have been kind of ignoring them unless they don't have the option to get VIPs, because VIPs have been the better route. So again, we'll continue to look on this spreadsheet. It's one other thing that rares have started to get hit pretty rough. Even cards like Cyclonic Rift that had a bit of a snapback are down to 22. And so we have 2 rares over 20 now from Double Masters, just Stoneforge Mystic and Cyclonic Rift. And not a lot of cards over 10. Walking Ballista, Toxic Deluge, Thoughtseize, Sunken Ruins, Noble Hierarch, Mana Reflection, Exploration. Yeah, that's it. Everything else has gone down below that $10 mark. In fact, there are a lot of ones that if I am starting to delete, if I end up deleting cards that go under $3, we have like Phyrexian Metamorph that is going to even go below that. One of the other things that has had a pretty decent rebound, though, is I think the market is starting to move, me included, for these kind of bulk rare, what I call scraping the barrel, with these investments. So you see a lot of movement here in this under $1 type cards like Braids, Grand Architect, Champion of Lampole. These do have demand in EDH. Most of these cards were actually pretty good picks to be reprinted in the set, and they just got crushed for people that are just wanting to break even with chasing those Force of Wills and throwing everything online. So yeah, you can see these are the big daily increases, is these under $1 rare. The same thing is to be said about a lot of the uncommons. You're seeing movement in like cards like Welding Jar, and because these are cheap times of getting these cards, it probably go up to $1 to $2. That's what's kind of crazy about these double masters. If you go back to like Ultimate Masters, cards like Buried Alive, that had pretty good gains over time because they were the things that got crushed in value with the reprintings being uncommons, being commons, and then just kind of got ignored. And then they also have a lot of demand in the scope of things. So these type of cards had the best chance of actually being able to recover long term. So there are many of these cards that I do like long term in this price point, and maybe now was the time to get into those because in comparatively speaking, with their potentials, like you might be able to save a quarter on something like Bleakmoth Nexus, but if you're investing in Bleakmoth Nexus, you're probably going long term that this is going to be a $3 to $4 or $5 card. So that price point of saving like a quarter for where it could go its low might not be worth it to start picking these up when you find the lows for what they're going for now. So many of these cards, Call the Forge Master, Bleakmoth Nexus, these do see a significant amount of play in both competitive formats and in the more commander type formats. So like I like a lot of these, Thespian Stage, the Time Sieve, the Maelstrom Pulse. These are cards that if they do miss reprints, if this is going to be the last time because now they've lost their equity for future sets, I could actually see a pretty good trajectory in the next 2 to 3 years. And again, a lot of people don't like that long term. They're into the really, really short term. I do like long term for these particular singles because as you age, 2 to 3 years just goes by in a blink of an eye and people forget, and all of a sudden you go back to things you invested in 2 years ago and they've had triple ups, quadruple ups, and those are good times to get out. There's a few cards that I was noticing that I actually invested in from Ultimate Masters that have gone up 3 to 4 times in value in this type of rare and uncommon slot that now is a good time to move them, and it's been a success with those particular cards. So I've always liked these. When you don't have eyes on particular products, like when everyone is chasing the Force of Wills and everyone's chasing the Mana Crypts, some of these other cards down here are the ones that just sneak by, and a $2 card turns into a $7 card, and a 50-cent card turns into a $3 card. That's what you can see with many of these cards from Ultimate Masters that did get reprinted. Like, what did Woodfall Primus end up going down to? I guess just $1.69. So that's not the best example, but there are plenty of them in this rare slot that did go down to basically nothing, that have had a price increase. This is when I remember I got in as a quarter. Yep, Revelark, there's a good example. I remember buying these like a quarter, and then they went up in value. They've got dumbed down again because of the C20 printing, but if they did get reprinted in C20, Revelark would probably be about a $2.50 card if you follow this trajectory of where it would be now. So these are great targets if you can kind of bank on them not getting reprinted from this rare type slot. So those are the ones that I'd look at. Investing 20 of these particular cards at 25 cents, you're putting in a small amount of chunk of change versus like one $5 card or one $10 card, and then being able to buy list these cards later on. I mean, of course, now buy list is terrible with Card Kingdom because of the Commander sets, but say this wasn't reprinted in Commander, I would expect this would be like a $1, $2.50 buy list card if Card Kingdom was actually selling out of these at like $2.25, $2.50. A lot of times Card Kingdom gives a good spread on cards they're trying to refill in their inventory. So say they sell it for $3, they'll pay $1.50 for it. And if you paid 25 cents for it, that's a pretty easy flip with the amount of labor that's involved with then just shipping off a pile of them to Card Kingdom. And what I like about Card Kingdom is that when they usually take a card, it's usually in the hundreds. And so, yes, you could make more if you decided to, try to sell these, painstakingly sell them on like Facebook groups or on TCG Player or other outlets. But a lot of times, the best bang for your buck, or at least best bang for your time, is just to go and buy list them for Card Kingdom once they've, doubled up, tripled up from what you paid for them. And then rinse and repeat. There's always opportunities to be buying into the latest. So that's where I would really focus on, is these particular cards. And maybe if I get time this week, I'll do a complete analysis of these lower end cards and see how well they should be able to fare long term. Like I said, I've been picking up some of these really low cards. I got into Cragman Cremator for 8 cents a piece, just because at that point I can just use them as bulk rares at that time period. I've been getting in a lot of foil cards. So many of these foil cards, like Bone Pickers, I believe I was picking up Bone Picker foils for 5 cents. This is a popper card in foil. It has a potential of seeing play in Modern and in Pioneer. I think that it's a very, very powerful card for being able to just cost 1 black. There might be a deck that actually will want to use it in the future. So Bone Picker, I think picking up foil versions of it for 5 cents. Same thing like Throne of Geth. That's another one I picked up for super, super cheap for a foil version. And there are other ones that in this uncommon things that, like the Cranial Platings, those things I was able. Is It Charms? There's another one. Is It Charms is getting it at 10 cents a piece for Is It Charms, because I do see play in Pioneer. These are all sorts of things that are great to restock. Again, I am a store, so I go through these type of cards whenever there is Pioneer tournaments, whenever there's Pauper tournaments, when there's just Commander players that need these uncommons. There is a market for me to actually get full value for these, and maybe I have that angle that you don't, and maybe this isn't something that you, as a kind of a solo investor that's doing it out of your home, has the opportunity to do, to have that market to buy. So again, you got to do what works for you. In the past, though, even these type of things were pretty decent to buy list. So Is It Charm goes up to like $1. You pay 10 cents for it. You could probably find a buy lister that pays something like 35 cents or a 50 cents for. And again, if you're doing these in the scope of hundreds of cards, that's not that bad of a flip. So, alrighty, last thing I want to talk about is Wizards doesn't seem to be slowing down. They've re-announced the secret layers. So this is also going to affect the market. So we have these secret layer oozes that has these more comic look of the oozes. So this one has necrotic ooze, acidic slime, scavenging ooze, the mimeoplasm, and void slime. So this one's kind of awkward for the targets because things like scavenging ooze have been crushed. I think necrotic ooze had kind of low supply-ish from Scars of Mirrodin. It hasn't seen a reprint. I don't believe it's seen a reprint. And this is just something that I think is going to crush the price of necrotic ooze. I know the mimeoplasm and void slime do have some reasonable amount of demand, and acidic slime has a lot of demand, and I think it's actually missed a lot of recent reprints, if I remember correctly. Let's go ahead and look at acidic slime and see. Last time, nope, it did get a Commander 2020 reprinting. So yeah, it's kind of a weird one for that alternate art, but it just shows us that Wizard of the Coast is still willing to print these secret layers. And my insider source says there's 2 more announced for this month. So this is just the first one for August that that has been spoiled. There is going to be 2 more for this month, and probably a ton for September, and they're going to ramp it up for Q4 with the holiday season, as these make pretty decent gifts. Now, the problem with secret layers is people are still waiting for Theros secret layers. They're still waiting for restocks of all these ones that were promised. So a Wizard of the Coast needs to get their act together if they're going to destroy the faith of the secret layers. I think that's why they gave. Were there really any in between the last few months? I think there was, if I remember correctly, but there hasn't been the amount that they used to do with like 3, 4, 5 a month, and it looks like they are ramping it back up in August. So that's what I have for you this week with the Rogue Market. I think the best pickup right now is like Modern Horizons. This seems to be on the move. It's got a lot of cards that have proven themselves in competitive, but not only proven themselves in competitive, but are pretty much staples now in EDH. So getting sealed Modern Horizons, I think, is a pretty good pick here. I still like other things that missed reprintings, like Elves vs. Vendors with a Dark Steel plate, and I actually do still like many of these sets that kind of got missed, like Ikoria. You can start getting into kind of the low of the cards from Ikoria and then go for the post rotation if we actually do get organized playback. There are a lot of ifs. It doesn't look like the pandemic's going away anytime soon. We could actually see a big increase in the rates when the flu season comes back in, so that could keep organized play off for another year. So maybe Ikoria just never has that ability to invest in those cards that are at their lows and then post rotation become like pivotal pieces. So that actually used to be my bread and butter before I really got into the modern specking. And then of course drop modern for Pioneer and drop Pioneer now for Commander. I mean, Commander's really been my bread and butter because it's the kind of the tried, tested, and true format that doesn't usually have price spikes unless a new Commander is printed that the card works with it. That the cards that actually see a lot of popularity have this slow increase in price, and those are my favorite cards because they're a lot more safe than these real wild spikes in whatever's popular in the latest modern deck. So what I used to before all this happened though is my main time investing in MTG Finance for short term was pre-rotation. So I try to look at cards that were powerful but were being kept back from some cards, say out of Guilds of Ravnica. And we can say, okay, once this card is out, this is the next best slot. So Mono Red used to be a perfect example. So Mono Red might have like a card that didn't see a lot of play because there's just a strictly better 2-drop than this one. And then something rotated and like, okay, now this is the better 2-drop because people aren't going to be able to play this card. They're going to want to play this card over it. And Mono Red is something that's going to stick around. So this is going to be the card that everyone needs to pick up. That used to be what I would do. One of my famous specs was Hellrider. When Hellrider saw no play when it was printed in Innistrad and the Scars Mirrored in Innistrad blocks for standard, and then post rotation, it looked like there was this mono red deck that would be very viable. And lo and behold, week 1 and week 2, it was the popular deck of choice. And Hellriders went from a quarter that I paid for them. I remember selling them between $8 and $10 just to local players or trading them for more value. And you can do that if organized play comes back in. You should be that shark at your local game store that has the cards. Especially if you find a local game store like the one that I found. Mine was more run by people who are more interested in more of the board games. They didn't care too much about like the competitive aspect of Magic the Gathering. They held tournaments and whatnot. But they had this really weird philosophy when they bought singles. They only would carry 8 of a card. So they would get 2 play sets and then they wouldn't buy more than 2 play sets of a particular card. Well, 2 play sets can go, even one tournament can strip you of 2 play sets. And so I'd be the guy that would have just kind of fill that need as the market. And so when people would come to trade to me, I would have what they needed and would be able to act sort of like a store in that aspect and trade commander cards to competitive cards to competitive players for commander cards, and commander cards to commander players for foils, then foils to the foil collector for competitive cards, rinse and repeat. And you'd actually be able to make out like a bandit even in one F&M setting. And that was how I've told this story before, but I had my collection stolen. I had about $8,000 worth of cards. They were stolen out of backpacks in my cards. Not going to get into the details. I'm sure I'll tell the story again. But I was able to grind my way back into being able to play competitively to where I was able to even build a deck for Modern to qualify for a Pro Tour through this kind of hustle at your local game stores through cards that are analyzing cards that were going to do well post-rotation. So this is something that I'm going to try to go back to these roots and look at these type of cards from Eldraine, Theros, and Ikoria. If you're interested in that, Rogue Market is the better channel for that. Eventually, this channel will get back to brewing decks. I've taken a break from Magic the Gathering just because Pioneer, Modern, and Standard were in such horrible shape in 2020. I've never seen just all 3 of these particular formats just be, dumpster fire formats. And that's what we really saw with Modern, Pioneer, and Standard. Now, it seems like Wizards has got the message. They've been very aggressive on bans. A lot of these new sets have had a lot of cards banned out of them in even Modern and Pioneer. Like Pioneer was just the message that Theros was just bad for Pioneer, so they banned a lot of cards that worked with cards that came out of Theros, and we should start to see a more healthy interactive meta because of these bannings. So it'll be interesting to look back at Pioneer once competitive is something that is an option again, and same thing with Standard. It should be very interesting with a lot of these really, really problematic cards that are rotating out, and to see where the format can actually settle. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're interested in more of this type of analysis, come over to the Rogue Market channel, and I will keep you updated on Double Masters as well as rotation, as well as Zendikar, as well as the many other things that are going to be coming out in the Magic the Gathering finance world. Anyway, I appreciate the comments, even appreciate the negative comments. Sure, call me out on stuff. We'll have to wait and see. There had been a lot of negativity in my last video. I don't know where people get so upset by just analysis. Like, I do not have an opinion on cards. This is just my analysis. Take it or leave it for what. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong. I'm trying to say this is what it is. And in my opinion, this is the route that Double Masters is going to go. It's going to keep depreciating in value. Whether you like that, whether you think that's good for the game or not, I particularly think that it's a fine line. It's a tightrope for Wizards to walk, whether they can keep their equity for future sets or they print stuff too quickly and it causes just a domino effect and a distrust in the market. Cards have to be worth something. You have to get a comparatively amount of money that you spend on a product. Otherwise, no one will buy the product. That's just this a collectible card game. It's the nature of the beast. A lot of people that want these cheap cards, they want, maybe Magic the Gathering's not for you. Maybe you should be looking into something like this, an LCG, a living card game, because those card prices tend to stay very, very close to the actual price of what you paid for the product, because a lot of LCGs, whenever a product goes out of stock, it's not limited, they just reprint it, and that product is always available. If you want this, something sort of like that, there are plenty of LCGs out there. What I think was made Magic so successful is the part of the fun of Magic the Gathering is collecting and trading and buying and selling, and many people get it's just human instinct to like that sort of. Everyone likes to be a merchant. Everyone likes to have watch things increase in value. A lot of people play the stock market because it's entertaining, not necessarily they're going to make a lot of money on it. Same thing can be said for Magic the Gathering. So you're just going to have to expect this with Magic, and they understand this as well. You can't expect Wizard of the Coast just to. All of these comments are like, Double Masters is doing exactly what Wizard wants it to do. They reprinted this so they can make formats more accessible. Oh, you sweet child. Oh, you sweet, sweet child, if you think that's the goal of Wizard of the Coast. Wizard of the Coast's goal for Double Masters is to come out like bandits. They want to be able to save their equity and have this set completely sell out, just completely be wiped out of their both the distribution process and their own warehouses, so that we're salivating for the next one. And the only way we're salivating for the next one is if prices remain high. Wizard of the Coast did not want to get Commander accessible for you. That was not their goals. If they're saying that's their goal, they're lying through their teeth. What they're trying to do is they're trying to find a way to make maximum amount of profit while keeping their reprint equity as high as possible. It's been what they've done with every set they've ever printed. That's why with Commander, they always have a limit of $100 worth of cards that they think is going to be reprinted, or the new cards that is going to be in the Commander 2020, because they know that it's going to be depreciated to where, like, look at these. Now the highest one is only $50 worth of value in these Commander sets. They're doing this with every reprint set. If you really think the Wizard of the Coast is in your corner for cheaper card prices, oh man, I have some snake oil to sell you. That's not the way the world works. That's not the way this company, a for-profit company, works. And it's just, it's wishful thinking at that point. So they have probably been able to barely skim by with this particular product. It's actually faring better than I thought it would fare. I thought it was way too quick for Double Masters, with Ultimate Masters just being reprinted. I think they got lucky with this kind of boom in the market. So we have 40% unemployment, but the stock market goes to record highs, which is just absolutely insane. There's got to be an adjustment sometime to make up for all this lost GDP that hasn't been going anywhere. It's just this money that's been recirculated, and a lot of it's gone to actually things like Magic the Gathering. One of the things that they got really lucky at is the theaters. Like, this is something the Magic the Gathering competes with, is things like going out to eat and going to the movies and just anything, travel expenses. All of those things have come to a standstill. I had a customer come in and say, hey, well, we usually take a vacation this time of year, but since we can't do that, we're just going to draft a Double Masters box instead. I mean, if that's a customer in my little neck of the woods, think of how many on a macro scale of that's been happening with collectible cards. And it's not just Magic, it's Pokemon, it's Yu-Gi-Oh!, it's trampolines, it's hot tubs, it's all these things that typically have their normal purchasing through a non-pandemic era have just gone through the roof, with people having this excess money they used to spend on travels and dining and things that are airplane tickets that are no longer an option. So when that goes back to normal, I'm thinking that's when we're going to really see the price adjust for the double masters especially. And I still do stand by the fact that 6 months down the road is going to be the low for double masters, not right now. If you're thinking that now is the time to buy, yeah, now is an okay time to buy. Like, I don't think we're going to see a huge decline anytime soon until maybe Zendikar, but I do think that there will be a time period where this is going to go back down below. My guess is under 1,200 is where it's going to settle for the total value of the box price. And I think that as far as the Dawn Glare Double Master is concerned, we're probably going to see it go below 250 for what they have on here. And I don't know if this actually includes their box topper or not. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I got a little rambly there at the end, but again, we'll keep analyzing this to death. This is an analysis channel. Don't take it personally. They're just my opinions. I'm not trying to ruin your way of playing Magic the Gathering or keep you from, trying to gatekeep or keep you from playing the game. I'm just trying to give you my 2 cents on how the market is operating. This is Kevin with Rogue Deck Builder. Thanks for watching.